And it's in FNAF 3. After FNAF 3's ending, when we learned about the fire, we thought that was it. We, for at least 20 seconds until people started brightening the image of the final screen, which is just like classic FNAF by now. And then that's when we saw Springtrap sitting in the shadows behind the stuffed animal that was in the image of the news article about the fire. Now, I have no idea how the photographer didn't see that, or if William has the news outlets working for him too, or whatever, but this is absolutely terrifying. And it's really what started us down the rabbit hole of the several hoops that we would have to jump through to find more clues and lore. Brightening this one image made us have to comb through the files of mobile games. Anyway, this image set us on a path to thinking that William survived the fire and that this would not be the last FNAF game. I don't know if this was supposed to be, or if this was just an Easter egg, like if it was meant to allow for more games in the series if Scott wanted to, because originally he wanted to end it with FNAF 3, but hey, either way it happened, and here we are 6 games and 15 books later. And it ain't the first one. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it usually indicates what got them to start killing or other psychological issues that they could use to predict their next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst way possible. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, okay? I'm not a dad, I think, so I can only imagine how this must have felt. And if that was me, I wouldn't just be burning down restaurants in an attempt to send William to hell. I would be doing that myself, an express route right downstairs. And at 7, Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night was actually a pretty dividing point among FNAF fans and theorists alike. Some thought that it was Afton in hell, others thought that it was a coma, but we now have a definitive answer. Assuming it does take place between Security Breach and FNAF 6, as the release of the games would indicate, it would actually mean that Ultimate Custom Night is what Burntrap is seeing while unconscious in the recharge station. Perhaps it's him keeping himself from dying in the recharge station, like a mind kind of fight thing, like whenever a main character dies in a show and they have to fight back to get to their body. Yeah, that kind of thing. And we don't actually see him wake up until he beats 50-20 mode, and then he comes after us like we see in the true ending to the game. So basically, we get down there, and as soon as we activate it, he beats 50-20 mode. This actually makes sense given that Scrap Trap is in Ultimate Custom Night, since this would sort of be like a nightmare sequence with Scrap Trap serving as what William is dealing with in these moments, or I guess his misdeeds, or his wickedness made of flesh, as Nightmare puts it. But you know, the whole aftermath of the FNAF 6 fire, and then returning to that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, either because of Charlotte being there and he wanted to kill her, or maybe just some other thing that Henry had to do to actually lure Afton back. We don't actually know what that was, but either way, he had to deal with it, and it makes sense as to why now. And it's 6, Brothers. Now this is something that Matt Pat actually talked about in his recent FNAF Theory video that went out on January 1st, 2022. However, this is something I have been calling for ages. Ever since we learned Gregory's name, ever since that Funko statue was leaked, I have been saying that their relationship is very brotherly. It was awfully similar to Michael and the Crying Child. Especially when the older brother is represented by, or maybe even now possessing, the Glamrock Freddy animatronic, when it was a version of a Freddy animatronic that killed his little brother in the first place. And before you get all mad at me saying, oh no, that was Fredbear. Fredbear is a version of Freddy, okay? Go away. Fredbear is literally a version of Freddy. Back off. The fact that this is so solid after the game comes out, it kind of explains that what happened actually did happen. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that now we're trying to make up for it, to reconcile. And if Gregory ends up actually being a robot crying child, you all owe me a coffee. Because I've been calling that one for ages too. I have been saying that for so long, and so many people got mad at me. But look at this, Matt Pat says it, and I saw no hate comments on the top, at the top comments, okay, on that video. I saw no hate. Halfway through into number 5, the FNAF 6 Fire.
FNAF 6 acted as the narrative ending for many animatronics. The fun times in Molten Freddy, the puppet inside of Lefty, Scrap Baby, and even us as Michael Afton. But the secret true ending to this game actually shows us the aftermath of this fire. We see the aftermath of FNAF 3's Fire in Sister Location's final cutscene, with Springtrap popping out of the ruins of Fazbear Fright, and this time around we learn about the third last game's fire in this ending. Since, as Matt Pat pointed out in his recent theory, as well as many people have pointed out in the comments of various videos and Reddit posts, the pizzeria you're in for this secret ending looks a hell of a lot like the one that we make, or like the base for the one we make in Pizzeria Simulator. And since it burns down, basically it doesn't matter which one you made, this is what it would burn down to. Which honestly explains why William was in the recharge station, okay? They didn't actually have to move his body. Which actually, it makes sense. Finally, something in this godforsaken series makes sense. Something makes sense in a FNAF game, praise the Lord. But this also means that he hasn't been taken to the hospital yet for the man in room 1280 to occur. This idea that this is the FNAF 6 pizzeria also ends up solidifying when you see that the blob is like the new Ennard, with all of the different animatronics from FNAF 6 present when you actually like take a look closer and even like clip inside of it. There's a video for it. Many people have done this on YouTube, but you can like see the Scrap Baby mask, you can see the Puppet's mask. Yeah, combine this with, you know, the fact that Springtrap is here, or I guess Burn Trap or Scrap Trap, whatever, okay? The fact that William in some form of animatronic Golden Bunny is here, and you get an explanation for what happened after the FNAF 6 fire.
Getting close to the end in number 3, Burn Trap. William appears as the optional yet canon final boss in Security Breach, named Burn Trap according to the game files. He only appears in the canon ending, which is the Afton ending, or the true ending, whatever you want to call it. This form is the result of Vanny downloading William's soul from the digital realm into an old hybrid abomination of an animatronic suit, endoskeleton, and the little remains of his corpse, which just seems to be an extremely burnt Scrap Trap animatronic. Hence the Burn Trap name. Burn Trap's new rotten form appears to be his old but modified, tattered, greenish brown Spring Bonnie suit that has become even more severely withered, tattered, and burned because, you know, it's been through like 3 fires. With the whole entire lower jaw ripped out, revealing his skull covered in blood with some burnt flesh remaining and some metallic eyes and small pupils. The suit is missing fur with the exception of their chest, hips, legs, upper legs. The rest is extremely burnt. He's very charred. He's like charcoal at this point. Like you can use him to forge a sword. His old endoskeleton has seemingly been replaced with the newer endoskeletons that the Glamrock animatronics have, and that makes him even taller and gives him sharp claws and fingers. So yeah, I don't think I need to explain why this is on this list. But ultimately, in number 2, the Blob. The true ending is seemingly one of the scariest parts of the game because it contains a load of things. After making your way into Burn Trap's area, Freddy will be taken over by Afton's newest form, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him by using the 3 monitors to keep burning him. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come after Gregory and use the doors to temporarily lock them out if they can. When Springtrap is burned though, the Blob, which has like that tentacle monster thing, will attack and make sure that he doesn't get free, which is really weird and horrifying considering how, you know, I don't know if he's dead. Freddy and Gregory will be shown escaping and then sitting on a hill together, but the tentacle monster's identity was never revealed. But originally, after this game, the final Fazbear Frights book would have released, which would have showed us that the tentacle monster we would have been talking about is in fact Baby, or I guess Elizabeth Afton, or it is in the books. But I guess while they share similar elements, they aren't the same thing because Baby's eyes are off. So it could be that the original 5 missing children are getting their revenge on Afton, since those could be the souls inside of Ennard, which would have been Molten Freddy, and that's seemingly the face that the Blob is using, even though it's Funtime Freddy. But you know what? The only way to explain this series fully is to say that every game takes place in a different universe. Every game is separate from each other. That's the only way it works. And finally, and in number 1, the spring locking. I believe we all know this story by now. Everything was going well at first, okay? The cops couldn't pin him down, and he was on his way to immortality. Well, technically he had it already thanks to the one you should not have killed, but once William discovered Remnant, however, he spiraled. He wanted to use it to fuel his life and truly make him immortal. So, in an effort to study it further, William lures the possessed animatronics to the back room room where they can't access it, and then he uses it to dismantle them, planning to melt them down into their endoskeletons to fuse that soul metal into his body. However, by doing this, he unknowingly releases the souls of the victims that he claimed however many years ago. I think it might have been like 2 or something, I don't know. Shocked from seeing his literal murder victims, he ends up fleeing into his spring bodysuit, which also makes him feel powerful. However, his haste coupled with the leaking room ended up causing the spring locks to fail, crushing him in torturous agony for the next 30 years. However, he didn't die from this, because as we learn in the Man in Room 1280, he was being kept alive by the spirit of yet another victim. So he's been living in agony for the past 30 years, and that makes him damn well deserving of the #1 spot. Before you ask, Garvey isn't even a thing, okay? So like, I'm not gonna talk about Garvey. It's not even in the FNAF canon. Why are you asking me about it? Leave me alone. Inattention Chica. The problem with this, it's embarrassing because every time I bring up Chica, I can't help but make some form of crude joke about her. And not like a stupid joke, like Kentucky Fried Chica, like I did for Top 10 Tastiest Animatronics and for that thumbnail. Instead, what I did for #1 of the Tastiest Animatronics list, where I put Toy Chica as #1, then said it was obvious as to why she was at the top, because she is one. Like, don't get me wrong, okay? I think that it was funny as hell, but that's still kind of embarrassing, since you know, like it's a fictional robot chicken, and I make jokes about wanting to sleep with. I don't know any way to put that delicately. Honestly, I mean, like, I made the whole Top 10 Tastiest Animatronics list because I wanted to make that joke at the end about how Toy Chica was the tastiest. For real, that's why I made the list, so I could just say that I wanted to eat Chica. Yeah, embarrassing. That video was made when we only had 90 FNAF videos on the channel though. 300 later, and I cry anytime I hear a nose honk. And at 9, 5 honks at Cali's. And by Cali, I mean California. Since back in 2014, when the first FNAF game came out, Smosh Games did their first FNAF game bang, as they were calling it. Game. YouTube game, where they all played a round of the game, and the person who survived the shortest amount of time before getting killed had to put on a werewolf costume and dance around in the street in an attempt to get 5 cars to honk at them, only being able to take the costume off when they did. Now, this would have been more embarrassing if it wasn't Lasercorn who got punished, or maybe now I just think that that would be way too fun, but honestly, I remember this video so fondly, and at the time, I thought it was pretty embarrassing. Like, nowadays, I'd probably just do that for fun, and instead of having to be forced to do it because I lost a game. But still, at the time, it was pretty rough to watch. Not as rough as some of their other punishments. Wrestling and lubricant definitely comes to mind, but these were the good old days of YouTube, where people watched Minecraft mod reviews and my music taste was limited to Minecraft parodies. Oh, and when I didn't talk about FNAF for 8 hours a day. And at 8, MANGLE Vent. Eddie VR is one of the most popular VR tubers on YouTube currently, with over 6 million subscribers at the time of recording. He was really put on the map though thanks to his FNAF VR Like a Mexican series, which he also continued with his FNAF Security Breach Like a Mexican series on his second channel, which also used to be his main channel. Long story. Anyway, when starting up his series, he was getting a feel for the game. This involved him popping into some of the mini games, freaking out, and then quitting. And after staking his head outside the office in FNAF 1, thus triggering a Foxy jump scare, he hopped into the MANGLE Vent repair level. Now, his initial reaction was that this doesn't seem too bad, but when the lights go out, he starts freaking out a bit. But when it really got embarrassing, but also hilarious, was when he started the level by flipping the first lever, right? The one that's in front of you that you have to get real close to. And then he went absolutely ballistic when Mango was right there in his face. Of course, he was calling it Mangoes, which made quite a few commenters more than a bit upset, but still. Absolutely hilarious, but I'm sure not for him. And at 7, Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night was a really interesting turning point for the FNAF series. The original Afton storyline was at a close, and this game was the ultimate capstone to that, with some important lore hints in the form of voice lines that played when you get killed, which is good because it happens a lot. However, this game still fits into the FNAF story and serves as a link between the original story and the new one. The new story being Afton trying to escape the video game world he got himself locked in, or now being burn trap or whatever the hell he is. But we originally interpreted this game all wrong, since we initially thought that William was burning in hell this time, or stuck in purgatory. But as all Supernatural fans know, purgatory is just a giant forest where monsters kill each other for eternity. But in reality, this must just be what he's seeing in his charging station in the basement of the Pizzaplex, since honestly, that's really the only way that this makes sense. At least if it's still Afton. Eventually he wakes up, which is him beating 50-20 mode in fights against us, which results in him getting grabbed by the blob and maybe surviving, because we still don't know. Halfway through in at number 5, Midnight Motorist. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it. Since in the game files, the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin this game to what happened after William kills Charlotte outside of Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2's Take Cake minigame. But if this is true, this is probably one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, and then he goes home to his kids. He reprimands his son and abuses him by locking him in his room so much that he had to break a window to escape. Plus, think of all the people driving past him, unaware of the violent crime that he had just committed. It's scary because this is the case in the real world too, technically speaking at least. Anyone we encounter could be a serial killer. And that's a horrific thought. In at 4, Assimilate. The ending of FNAF VR, like the real ending where you fight Glitch Trap, is certainly a scary moment. It also just sounds weird, you know? Like this guy just pops into your VR headset, then takes over your body so that you end up killing for him. It's kind of messed up. And actually not kind of, that's incredibly messed up. She ends up knowing what's going on too. Like she actively talks in hushed tones and about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So like what the hell's the dynamic here? And by she and her, I mean Vanny, obviously. I mean, like, possessing someone is already pretty messed up, but then, like, causing them to make a rabbit costume because you're still kinky furry is a whole other set of equations. I don't even want to talk about how messed up that is. She knows there's an evil inside her, but she can't do anything about it. She fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William's been saying in her head, and she knows what's going on. Ah, man, like, well, being willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, even though you know that William's gonna take over, that's that. Man, you really need a therapist. So does William, honestly. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, the Puppet. The Puppet is one of the most iconic characters ever in the FNAF space. The character that gave life to other animatronics and William Afton's first victim, but also one of the simplest characters to contain. All you need to do in FNAF 2 to avoid the Puppet is keep the music box wound. The game even tells you when it's running out of juice with a flashing icon on your screen, and then even a flashing icon next to the camera that you need to go to wind up the box. So imagine how embarrassing it is to get jump scared by the Puppet when the game gives you a million warnings that you're about to be jump scared. Yeah, pretty embarrassing. And it's even worse in FNAF VR, since thanks to the way that it's set up, you just need to keep your finger on the wind button and then use your other hand to worry about the lights and the Freddy mask. That's it. It's one of the easiest FNAF VR levels because of this. But people still get jump scared by the Puppet. And it's unfortunate really, but still creepy because the way the Puppet walks up to you in FNAF VR. At least like that way you literally see it coming, although at that point you also can't really stop what's happening. It explains how he got there though. He didn't just jump from his room and go around corners. Penultimately, in at number 2, was that the bite of 87? Markiplier is commonly known as the FNAF King. Some consider Doc the FNAF King, others MatPat. And despite our over 400 FNAF videos, nobody really thinks that I'm the FNAF King, despite me literally having King in my username, but that's fine, I'm not salty. However, the biggest embarrassment, at least in my eyes for Mark, was the infamous line, "Was that the bite of 87?" said after watching Crying Child get chomped on at the end of FNAF 4. Now, this was indeed not the bite of 87, but this single line sent the internet spiraling. Now, some people still to this day fight that FNAF 4 is the bite of 87, which it's not. The game takes place in 1983, okay, and it was confirmed as such in Sister Location. But either way, I've had multiple people follow me on either Instagram or TikTok, which you should totally follow, by the way, because I'm posting more FNAF content on there. But a load of these users have had their names as some version of this line. The one I can remember the most, which is probably because it was the first one, was that the bite of _87? And then after that, a whole lot of them came. I don't know why. I mean, like, it's probably something that Mark wants to forget, but I'm sure that Markiplier simps love it. Yeah, that's right, Jada, I'm looking at you. What do I need to do to be the FNAF King? God, I've only made videos for a year. And finally, in at number 1, Left Eye. This is definitely not going to help with the whole FNAF King thing. However, it's more of a case of not being the Direction King. So back when FNAF VR first came out, I was playing it on the channel a couple of times. Actually, no, this was like 2 years after it first came out. But when I first got it, like I mentioned previously, I was secretly closing my eyes because, again, I'm a little... However, the most embarrassing time for me was when I was trying to do parts and service levels. It starts off with Bonnie, and in becoming the purple guy in FNAF VR, which is a video on the channel that you should check out, the first instructions are to remove Bonnie's left eye. Now, I pulled out the left eye, but I kept getting jump scared, so I figured I was doing it too slow, or too fast, or I was hitting Bonnie instead of just pulling out the eye, so I tried it, and I kept trying, and I tried a lot, each time getting jump scared. And it wasn't until after the video, after I had filmed it and was editing it, that I realized that I was pulling out my left instead of Bonnie's left, which is a really stupid way of putting it, but I guess it makes sense given the series we're talking about here. Yeah, that was a rough one. I loved the comments on that video though. I was red-faced for like a month after this until I finally got my redemption.
And at number 10, in-universe games. The knowledge that Scott Cawthon's in-universe counterpart has made games about the Fazbear restaurants in the FNAF universe has been driving us, or more particularly me, crazy ever since we learned about it in Help Wanted. Literally Help Wanted's opening scene. What games are the ones he made? Were they the original FNAF games? Does anything we've done up until this point in the games actually matter? Well, it seems like Security Breach might have actually at least kind of explained it with a single machine known as Mangle's Quest, which, if you don't remember, is one of the mini games that you had to play in order to unlock the good ending of FNAF 3 and the Happiest Day minigame. I guess technically though that has even more implications. If to release the souls of children we had to actually like glitch out an actual game, but that's a discussion for another day. I'm not talking about that now. And at 9, toy animatronics. Has Security Breach actually wrapped up the story of the toy animatronics? It's possible. I mean, this idea has been out there for a while, really ever since Glamrock Chica was revealed. But could the toy animatronics actually have been reused or repurposed into the Glamrock animatronics, or at least parts of them being used? And actually it would make sense, considering how these animatronics seem to also have like a security database. Oh my god, wait, no, they actually do have a security database. Freddy straight up pulls Gregory out of his stomach and then like looks at him and says, I cannot locate you. There's no profile for you. So yeah, they have a security database. They don't like seem to have one, they actually have one. Just like the toys from FNAF 2. They would scan a criminal database to see if anyone was willing to commit murders. But with facial recognition and conveniently the same glitches that allowed them to misidentify William, allowing them to not identify Vanny, since Freddy is unable to see Vanny without Roxy's eyes. Which begs the question, could the other animatronics see her? Or like, is it just Roxy? And if the last versions of the toy animatronics were so terrible at their job, because I mean like at this point, they know they were. And I guess like maybe they were like, oh yeah, no, it's because William programmed them, so that's why they were terrible. But like still, why would you reuse that? Why would you risk it again? That seems like a absolutely abysmal idea. And at 8, alligator mask. Now my original idea was that the man in room 1280 took place after FNAF 6's fire, and that's how William became Glitch Trap. However, it's seeming more and more that the man in room 1280 actually takes place after Security Breach. After all, I mean, like, it would explain why the one you should not have killed is wearing an alligator mask, since it would be Monty if this does take place after, since there wasn't really an alligator animatronic beforehand, and there's no way that an alligator mask is Happy Frog, okay? Just saying. And considering how Freddy runs off with Gregory at the end of the game, Monty would be left to run the show. I mean, we actually like see this happen in a newspaper article at the end of the good ending. The one where you go through the loading dock that required level 7 clearance, and you just like, Gregory somehow drives a van with Freddy and then uses the battery to jumpstart Freddy. Yeah, that ending, we see that since Freddy's gone, Monty ends up running the show. And Vanessa even uses this as a threat to try to convince Freddy to give us up when he's in parts in service. You know, when his like head is disconnected and we have to reconnect it. So a kid wearing a Monty mask after the canon ending of Security Breach would explain a lot. It would make a lot of sense. It would also explain the reason why Afton's body isn't burnt horrifically like it's supposed to be in the Man in Room 1280 in FNAF 9, because like that he hasn't done that yet. I mean, it also explains why he's called Burn Trap. At least we know he didn't escape the FNAF 6 pizzeria like everyone thought he had though. right?
And at 7, Music Man! Now, a more recent embarrassing moment, or maybe it's not embarrassing to him, MatPat was reacting to the latest trailer, at least at the time, for Security Breach, when he sees a giant Music Man crawl out of a hole in the West Arcade, a sequence we now know as one of the best in the entire game. But his reaction to the character's first appearance, iconic, with a very intense Music Man! MatPat flipped about being right with one of his mini theories about the legs we see on screen in Freddy and Friends on Tour episode 304, where he claimed that the white gloves really indicated that it was going to be Music Man. But this moment was not only iconic, but kinda memeified, with me referencing it multiple times in various previous videos, and the internet even remixing this into a song that is so much of a jam even Snoop Dogg would bop to it. I mean, like, there's also the whole meme of crying child as a kid wearing any shirt with 2 stripes thing that was going around, and then I even used it in a thumbnail for Top 10 Gaming Elite. That's probably more embarrassing, but I haven't really gotten to talk about the whole Music Man thing, so I wanted to. And at 6, Panic. Honestly, looking back, panicking at all during a FNAF game is pretty embarrassing, since nothing can really hurt you, and while yes, in VR it definitely feels like you're really there, it's not really going to cause any danger to you. Although, I will say that I am totally a little bitch when it comes to horror, okay? The first time I played FNAF VR, I played it on the channel. And I'm already bad at normal FNAF, so playing it in VR was even worse, okay? I was even worse, which resulted in me running out of power on the first night, which is kind of my signature move. So, as the slowed March of the Toreador started playing, I was freaking out, and I knew that that was pretty embarrassing. But not only that, I actually then proceeded to survive the night since the time hit 6 a.m., thus making all that panicking worthless and for nothing. I'll let you in on a little secret though, okay? Well, what you saw was embarrassing. The reason I find it so embarrassing was because I was closing my eyes in the headset. Yeah, I had planned on reacting to the jump scare sound, since I would be able to tell audio-wise and I wouldn't have to deal with Freddy in my face. But yeah, closed my eyes in a VR headset because I'm a little bit. Halfway through, into number 5, Springtrap Rule. One of the other most embarrassing things that, while may not have happened to anyone or in any of the FNAF games, is just the sheer amount of famous internet rule images and videos that there are for these characters. But like, okay, look, with Chica, I get it. God damn it, there I go again. But the worst one of all, at least I think on the embarrassment scale, is Springtrap Rule 34. Art. That rule being for anything you can find on the internet, somewhere, somehow, there will be an adult version of that content. And unsurprisingly, FNAF and even Springtrap are not immune to this rule, unfortunately. But just think about that for a second, please. Most people consider William Afton to be dead, even if he's not actually dead. Which means that most people who look at this are looking at a dead serial killer's rotting corpse stuck inside an animatronic that has shoved every inch of him with metal and robotic bits and thinking, damn, that's sexy. I've had people DM me these forms of Springtrap images before. Like, bro, what? Why? Like, he's literally a man who should be dead, but is being kept alive by the spirit of one of his kid victims, and you want to see him flog the dolphin? This is the reason that God left in Supernatural. God has left the chat. Jesus has left the chat. Allah has left. Everyone has left. Satan has left the chat. In at 4, FNAF 4 prediction. Oh, look at that. Once again, MatPat is on this list. However, I've made enough digs at myself. It's kind of equal, so I think it's allowed. But during the build up to FNAF 4, we really had no idea what was going on. And then once it released early on, MatPat thought that he had won, saying that in a rush to actually release FNAF 4, Scott missed a huge detail that made the game actually impossible, without even pointing out how anything is possible in a series about animatronics being possessed by the souls of children and a killer who literally can't die. The entire theory relied on the point that this was the bite of 87, something that last time I noted is one of the most embarrassing debates in all of FNAF history, saying that if the frontal lobe of the brain had been removed by an animatronic, the kid that we play as wouldn't feel fear, thus the nightmare animatronics were impossible. And you know what? This would have been true had this have been the bite of 87. However, we now know that that is not the case. But since MatPat was stuck in con season, we'll give him a bit of a pass here. But seriously, looking back, it's pretty cringe, especially with what we know now. Like, looking back on any past theory, especially my own when more evidence comes to life, is a pretty rough deal. But
Yeah. And finally, into number 1, the Help Wanted ending. Now, while the whole glitch trap shouldn't be possible thing is a whole other can of worms that I'm not going to explore, I think that Security Breach, and more so the Princess Quest ending, perfectly explains the Help Wanted ending. You need to beat the first game, then you beat the second game, and then you choose the Vanny ending, and instead of pushing the button to disassemble Vanny, you play the third Princess Quest game. This results in the player actually saving Vanessa as long as you beat the third one, and then finding Vanny's mask on the floor. But how did that really save Vanessa, you ask? Well, actually, it's fairly simple. Help Wanted. If you've seen any of my videos where I discuss the endings of Help Wanted and how when we complete that puzzle in the final battle, we get locked behind a door, you'll know that I said that that's us being distracted so that William has an opportunity to actually shut us away in our own mind. So if we do the thing that we do to actually beat him when he's attacking us, we're just distracted enough so that he wins even more. And that he does. But this Princess Quest ending actually really proves me right. Since the end of Princess Quest 3, you open a giant door with a large keyhole surrounded by glitching cracks and purple stuff. And in Help Wanted, we get sealed behind a giant door with a large keyhole with cracks around it and even handprints on the inside. This with the obvious connection via Princess Quest to Help Wanted, because you know Princess Quest was the mobile version of the 16 tapes. This is us releasing the player from Help Wanted, who consequentially ends up being Vanessa from the wall that Afton set up, since after this door closes we see her mask on the floor, and even sit on a hill with Vanessa and Freddy's head, which is a whole other can of worms, which makes MatPat think that Gregory is crying child, Freddy is Mike, and that Vanessa is Elizabeth Afton, which we've been calling for months. I feel like we've been calling that for a year, but